Good morning, friends, and welcome to Unity of San Luis Obispo, an inclusive spiritual community. We are blessed to have you here this morning. Good morning to those on live stream, those of you who are watching as we are sharing it. Bless you. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to share, this video will be available in our archives, and we thank you for your time and attention and an understanding that the presence and spirit of God, of love and life that we seek is already within each of us. We come here, we tune into the live stream at any time to remind us, not to give us anything that we don't already have, but to remind us that the Spirit of truth exists and lives in each one of us in all life. And so that's why we continue to affirm that we are an inclusive spiritual community, so that we can remember at all times that when we look out into the world, the face we see, whatever face that might be, is the face of God. So today is Memorial Day, and I would like to celebrate, honor, and remember all of those who gave their lives, went willingly to experience fighting for our freedom. And so there are 2 days throughout the year. There's Memorial Day on the 11th, there's Veterans Day in November, and sometimes we're not really sure which is which, what we do. I mean, we know that there are 2 days because there are 2 different kinds of celebrations, but on Memorial Day we're talking specifically about those who have fallen in the line of duty. On Veterans Day in November, we honor all those who have fought and risked their lives for our freedom. So today we just want to bless all those souls who willingly gave their lives so that we might experience a greater sense of freedom, a greater sense of understanding that we are free and yet we are part of a greater world that ideally works together in the pursuit of freedom for all people. So we give thanks and we bless all of those who gave their lives, all of their families, all of those who continue to give their lives. And we give thanks that not only did they experience incredible courage, but that we understand and are opening ourselves to other ways to experience conflict and to come out the other side. Blessings to all of you, and thank you for your courage in fighting for the values that we represent. Brett is away this week. He and his lovely wife are out in Oklahoma City being blessed and blessing their grandchildren. And so Matthew is going to share his music today, and I'm excited about that. I know we all are. But today we are going to be working with the last 3 of the 5 agreements, which used to be the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. For me, there's no question that as we continue to live and grow, we're going to understand more wisdom at a deeper level. And so for years, the 4 agreements were a powerful demonstration of not only Toltec wisdom, which was the wisdom of Mexico in the 12th and 13th century, but of the universality of that wisdom, the fact that the words, the efforts, the goals of the 4 or 5 agreements are to help us align ourselves with a deeper sense of our own reality. Why are they called agreements? Because in the Toltec wisdom, it seems that we unwittingly and unconsciously make agreements with ourselves and our society. We're born into certain societal agreements about who we are and who the rest of the world is. But if we become more conscious, we realize that those agreements might be very limiting, might not be giving us a bigger picture. And so we are encouraged to take a look at those old agreements and see whether or not they're giving us the freedom, the self-esteem, the understanding of our own spirituality that we deserve. And then we get an opportunity to make new agreements. So the 5 agreements, we went through the first 2 last week. Not that you ever really go through them, but we did another overview. And anytime we do an overview, we get a chance to go deeper and deeper into their wisdom. So be impeccable with your word is the first agreement. And when we're talking about the word, we're talking about the word of God as well as the words we speak. We're talking about an inner life as well as an outer life. And so maybe one of our old agreements was say the things people need to hear and will approve of you if you do. The new agreement would be let the outside be an expression of your inner truth. What is your truth? And how can you express that truth? Because having an inner truth is part of our divine design. Having the inner truth is something we were born with, the inner gifts of the Spirit, the light, the love, the wisdom, the specific talents. All of these are born within us. This is our inner truth. But our work is to express it in the world. As we have heard over many, many years, in traditional language, to be the hands and feet of God. And so what we say in the outer world, words like, I can't, I don't think I'm good enough, I'm too old, I don't think I deserve it, I'm in the wrong place, it's not for me, it's too good to be true. All of those agreements that we hear so often, not only from our own voices in our own consciousness, but around us, that agreement has to be shifted to an invitation from Spirit to make our gifts of the Spirit known to the world, to make those gifts known to the world. And so what we feel on the inside and what we express on the outside need to be in alignment, and we feel whole, and we feel that we understand our own divine nature and, as a result, the divine nature in others. Don't take anything personally. Right, that'll work. Well, and I'll tell you why it's hard to do. Our ego, in the old agreement, we believed that the ego ran the show, that the ego was that which I am. The ego is an aspect of personality that has superficial and selfish values. It's an aspect of our own consciousness, but it's not the deeper, wider, more loving self that we call the Christ within, or the divine I am. And so the ego has made agreements, and one of those agreements was if people say we're bad or they criticize us, then we're bad people. If they say we're good, then we're good people. And it seems so simple, and it seems that that would work, but it doesn't. No, it doesn't work at all. Simply because each of us has a perspective. We see life from our own vantage point. No matter how much we ever learn and grow, we are never going to be at the place where we can be a piece of the pie and the whole pie at the same time. That is why we understand that no matter how far we've grown, there's always a greater experience, the macrocosm, of which we are a microcosm. Yes, the drop of water to the ocean is how we are to spirit, but not the enormity of the ocean itself. So anything we say or do is going to be coming from our own unique individuality. And so you ask the question, how could I possibly give advice or tell someone else what to do if I'm not in their shoes? So, trying to make a new agreement here, we begin with prayer and meditation. We begin with emotional intelligence, being able to cultivate our understanding of others' own unique individuality and how that works. And so we're able to be more compassionate with others. But we can never really know what another person should do based on what we would do, because there is that diversity within unity that's paradoxical and magical and fascinating. So just because someone said, I don't resonate to what you did, it's not for me, I don't resonate to it, doesn't mean that it's bad. Although we might mean to say I don't resonate to it and end up saying that's bad. It's bad, it's no good. And if we make that mistake, and when I say make that mistake, I mean the mistake would be to believe that we know what's good or bad at a universal level, when the fact is that we are perfectly legitimate in saying this is not for me. That's perfectly legitimate, but that doesn't mean you get to take it off the universal menu, right?
Yeah.
It's good for somebody, but it's not good for me. So the old agreement would be, if I say it's bad, or if you say what I did is bad, then it's bad, and I have to feel bad. If you say I did something well, then I get to rejoice, and I get to be good, and I get to be happy with myself, and so I walk around like an emotional yo-yo. This is a universal challenge that's always been a problem. A big problem for our self-esteem and our understanding of how we are living our lives, the quality that we are living, and what our boundaries are. So the new agreement would be, don't take anything personally. And so that would mean it doesn't mean don't have personal relationships, and it doesn't mean not taking criticism or taking compliments and experiencing the wisdom inherent in all of that. But what it does mean is, don't let your foundation be rocked if what you do does not meet the personal taste of someone else. It's not the same. There is a wonderful series that I believe it's on, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix or not, but I'm not giving advertisements, but it's about one of the great Broadway and film directors, Bob Fosse, and his equally talented and beautiful and charming and very gifted wife, Gwen Verdon, who were great talents of the 20th century. They were also married, they had powerful relationships, and they produced some amazing shows together. And Gwen, I saw her, not the person in the biopic, but I saw her on an interview that she had done before her death in 1990. And in that interview, she was asked, how do you know which material, which play someone presents to you? How do you know? How do you deal with the fact that you have to say no? And how do you know whether it's going to work for you or not? She said, that was a big problem for me, not being able to say no. And, people would feel like their work wasn't good, or that I thought their work wasn't good, and they held my opinion with greater weight than they held other people's opinions. And it was really, really hard for me to be able to draw boundaries and yet not give the impression that I thought the work was bad. And so going through counseling, because she believes there's a special kind of counseling that comes with people who perform, because they have an unusual set of lives, not only as performers, but parents and spouses. She said she went through this counseling and she was able to find her voice to say, thank you for submitting your play. The content doesn't resonate with me, but I do recommend that you take this to other people who might very well be interested in it. Well, there you go. There you go. That is compassionate, it's true, and it's loving. She is able to be impeccable with her word, making sure that others don't take personally the criticism that she made, which basically she owned as coming from her own consciousness. I'm not saying nobody will like it. I'm saying thank you for submitting it, but it doesn't resonate with me. What a gift. What a gift. And if we make that new agreement, and other people can tell too. Other people can tell when you're just saying words to try to cover up the fact that you think it's bad. But see, that's not the question. The question was not whether it's bad or good, because people do things that some people say are bad and they turn out to be good, whatever those good and bad words mean, or money making or not money making, or successful and not successful. What she was doing was honoring the other person's individuality while honoring her own individuality. And that creates such a benevolence, such a blessing. And we need to really, really keep remembering that, not to get so elated over the momentary praise of someone when in fact someone else is sitting in the other room, could be saying the exact opposite. And then we don't know who we are. Well, we are who we are, and if we remember to honor what people say, to try to figure out what they mean when they're saying that, and then decide whether to keep it, use it, work on it, or let it go, that would be our decision, not based on praise or blame, but based in a secure feeling that we each have the right to our own opinion. Okay. Don't make assumptions. I assume you all know what I mean. No, just kidding. Okay. Wow, that's a tough one. And we can understand how the fifth agreement comes in because of this idea of not making assumptions. And why is it important to form a new agreement that says don't make assumptions? Simply and basically because we are assuming what other people mean when they say certain things or do certain things, and that is only based on what we think we would do in a similar circumstance. And it couldn't possibly be accurate because we're not taking into consideration that this person isn't necessarily finished with what they're doing, that they have their own perspective, that they might be saying something different. And we'll never get a chance to know what it was because we assume we know the end of their sentence while they're still in the middle. We assume that they are thinking and believing the way we think we believe, and we can't really do that because we haven't heard them. Why do we make assumptions? Many of them are negative, but not all of them. The ones that are kind of hard to listen to and understand are the number of, well, not only seniors, but predominantly seniors, but adults and young people who read promises on the internet or go into dating websites and start having a relationship with someone without even taking into consideration that that person might be someone else. That person, how many times have you heard that this person was dating someone else and then started asking them for money because they needed it, and then a further investigation, sometimes the relatives would come in and intervene. But the people that embraced and gave money to those on the other end of the conversation really believed that they were who they said they were, wanted to believe it. You ask, why shouldn't they believe it? And they did believe it, and they got really, really, really hurt by it. You're familiar with those examples. They're Dr. Phil, God bless him, has people on the show with great frequency, because it is a common problem, who have been scammed because they wanted to believe something and they had this opportunity to believe it. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can change your life. With just this one agreement. I assume you meant you didn't like what I was doing. I assume you meant that you want to help me because you didn't say no. I assume you meant that you'll give me the money until I'm able to pay you back. I assume you meant that you were in a committed relationship. I think I saw some body language that indicated that you might really approve of me. It saddens me that we're so afraid to communicate with one another that we have to look for a particular sign or a twist of the head or a movement of the arm to try to interpret what other people mean. Because the simple, yet problematic for many of us alternative is to say, what did you mean by that? What do you mean? Here's what I'm looking for. Can I, in the dating apps, here's what I'm looking for. Can I count on you to be looking for the same thing? Can I count on you to be who you say you are? Well, one of the ways to stop making assumptions is by meeting the person face to face, by asking as many questions as we can, by going into prayer and meditation and developing our intuition, by being willing to communicate even though the news we might hear might not be what we want to hear, but the news we hear is certainly the news that we need to hear, because it will be the truth of a situation. For example, I don't know why I didn't get that promotion. My boss smiled at me as I walked by and nodded her head. So I bet I got the promotion. Well, gee, I would hate to bet money on that assumption, because why wouldn't your boss smile? The toss of the head, it could have been a tick, it could have been moving their hair out of the way, it could be anything. Making assumptions almost always results in a tragedy in one way or another, and the most challenging assumption we can ever make is, oh, I made a mistake, or I didn't execute this well, or I failed at this, that must mean I'm a failure. Yeah, that must mean I'm a failure. That must mean I'm not good enough. I prayed, my prayer wasn't answered. I'm not loved by God. Think about the assumptions made in the name of God that have caused us to separate ourselves from spirit, from one another, and not having a foundation of truth to be able to follow through and find out if that even makes sense. You know? There is someone that was walking by, excuse me for interrupting, thank you for, oh, there they are. Good morning, thank you for being here. So yeah, making assumptions can not only lead to bad business decisions, unwise, but unwise self-concept, unwise concept of another. Each of us has the ability, and it's not about mistrust, but it's about clarity. I want to clarify that I understand what I heard you say, which might not necessarily be what you actually said, but that's why I'm asking the question. So let us work on making a new agreement about that, asking questions at the right time, rather than having to go through, oh, I thought you meant this. Oh, I thought you meant that. Oh, my last example. Years ago, everything that happened to me happened years ago because, gee, I've been here for so many years, and I don't want to talk about examples that happened with my dear friends that I know here, but this actually did happen years ago. In LA, I was stopped at a street called Lankershim. No, it was a street off of Lankershim. Lankershim was the big street. And I wanted to turn left, but I didn't have an opportunity because there was a lot of traffic. So this gentleman driving a truck saw my dilemma because he was stopped as well, decided to give me a break, and he gestured to me, and he gestured, come on in, I'll wait for you. I thought, wow, that is great. He really wants to give me this space and I can make that left turn and get in. I made the left turn, got in, and before the light changed, I was stopped by a cop who had witnessed the entire thing. And, excuse me, and I pulled over, he stopped me, and the first thing I said was, but the driver gestured to me and was giving me space. He said, you don't know that that's what he did. You don't know that he was shaking his arm because it was asleep. You don't know why he made that gesture. You were, 30 feet away, whatever the distance was. You can't take risks like that. Don't make assumptions that you know, even if that's what he were doing. We don't know who else was on the road that might have. So oddly enough, while I was trying to make that left turn, my goal was to get to driver's school because I was trying to make up a ticket, and it was fascinating because when I finally got there and I told him the reason I was late was that the policeman stopped me and gave me another ticket for making an assumption. I mean, that was a great laugh for the class, but the important thing was, and I've shared this with my son Matthew many times, gestures on the road can lead not only to making the wrong assumption, but to getting a traffic ticket. So clarity, clarity, clarity. And now when people do that, or when they'll say, come on, invariably I will say, thank you, I'll wait till I have a better opportunity, simply because I might not be reading that correctly. Okay. Always do your best. What is the old agreement? The old agreement is always do the best. Always do better than everybody else. The pressure is, to put it mildly, on the best. Always do the best. I remember as I was growing up, I remember one particular incident, although I know it happened with relative frequency, when I came home from school and my father said, well, how did you do on the test? And I said, I got an A. And he said, did anybody get an A+? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Ooh. It's like, oh, yeah, there is that, I suppose. Yeah, well, maybe I wasn't the best. Maybe I didn't do my best. Maybe I didn't do the best. That's the old agreement. If you do the best, then you're good. And if you don't do the best, then you're a slacker. Wow, living with that is tough, isn't it? That is one tough agreement that we have made in the past. Always do your best opens us up to the whole new world of relativity. I will do my best in every endeavor I undertake, which is not always an equal playing field. If I come in to sing a song and I'm practiced and I feel really physiologically fit and motivated, I can do the best I've ever done. But I can't go comparing it to other people's best. That's a completely different framework. Now, conversely, if I'm not feeling well, if I'm not practiced, if I don't have the situation under control, there's a very good chance, especially if I'm suffering from a cold, that I will not do as well as I did when I was feeling well. There's every reason to understand that. But for me to say I couldn't do the best because I had a cold absolutely demeans every effort. It really doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in an ego world of ego challenges and impossible expectations. When I go on and perform because I have to, because of other reasons of not wanting to let people down, and I'm not prepared for one reason or another, physically, mentally, and emotionally, all I can do is give it all I've got at that moment. And what I've got at that moment might be in a smaller container than what I have at any other moment. But that doesn't mean I haven't done my best. It just means that I'm not competing with everyone who ever sang a song in the world, including people at La Scala, and all of these other incredible venues. It means that I don't have to worry about that level of bizarre expectation, unreasonable expectation. I can place myself in a position to understand that the only thing I have control over at that moment is my attitude, and I can do my best while holding back tears, while being nauseated, while being depressed, while being angry, but I cannot compare that best to optimal circumstances. I just have to do my best. And so this agreement, number 4, is all about integrity. It's about integrity. That is the only thing that we can be responsible for, was did I want to do my best? Have I given everything I can give under these circumstances? And when I say yes, then I can be at peace. Agreement 5, be skeptical, but learn to listen. Wow, that is, don't believe yourself or anybody else. Well, there's an admonition, right? I mean, if I can't believe myself, who can I believe? We'll get to that. Use the power of doubt to question everything you hear. Is it really the truth? Listen to the intent behind the words, and you will understand the real message. Okay, why is this extremely important? Because many of us, in fear and in doubt of ourselves, do not communicate as freely and fully and as clearly as we would like. There are agreements that each of us has made in our own consciousness that precludes us from speaking frankly and clearly. Now, the one example that I have here is, again, when did this happen? Years ago, but it's true. I was in another country, and I was performing, and I had a road manager who was a lovely young lady named Susie. And every night after my performance, I would be served a meal at the venue. And I would always ask, Susie, would you like something to eat? And she would say, no, thank you. And I would say, are you sure? Because it's easy for me to order another meal. No, thank you. Well, I thought either she's on a diet or she's fasting or she just ate, but I didn't really pursue the idea that she might not be hungry on a regular basis. The following week, I get a call from my road manager, and he says, or her superior, and he said, Susie is starving while working for you. And I said, why? I invite her to eat every night. He said, she can't accept unless you ask her 3 times. Really? That That should have been written down somewhere. I didn't know that. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to, but see, in my agreement is, would you like this? No, thank you. Are you sure? Okay, thank you. That's as far as I would go. I didn't understand that in that culture, which was the Japanese culture at that time, again, which we're talking about the late 70s, that was something she had been raised with and learned from her culture. So naturally we couldn't communicate. And from that time on, I have always questioned. And my question would be, is there anything I can do to change your mind if I'm offering something? Is there anything that I haven't done or said that might make a difference? Because we can't know the inner workings of everyone's culture and how manners or politeness works. So from that time on, and for the rest of the tour, I would say, Susie, would you like a dinner? And she would say, no, thank you. And I would say, are you sure? And she would say, oh yes, no, thank you. And then I would say, I would really like to offer you a dinner. Would you please partake? And she would say, yes, thank you. And we all lived happily ever after. Seriously. If I happen to be walking around with tears in my eyes or, having a hangdog expression and someone says, how are you? Automatically, I'll say, just fine. Fine. I don't even believe myself, much less expect anybody. Believe me, don't believe yourself or anyone else. Our old agreements tell us to keep the deepest communications inside of us, to not share. And so I want to doubt. And I want to take this opportunity to look deeper. I do have some routines that, with people with whom I've had long relationships, and I understand. I'll say, how are you? Because I see body language that seems negative or sad. How are you? And the response will be fine. And I'll say, really? Yes, I'm fine. Well, pardon me for prying, but I have a feeling that there might be something more. Would you like to discuss it with me? Okay, all right. You pulled it out of me, It's hard to take things at face value. It really is, because one of our old agreements is putting on a happy face. And anything we have to consciously put on is not something that might belong there by virtue of total honesty. Certainly there are places where we have to say, oh fine, I'm fine, I can do this. But we can't really believe that we mean that. All we can do is believe that in that particular moment we're called upon to do something, and regardless of how we feel, we're going to have to do it. But this fifth agreement, be skeptical but learn to listen, is something that I would like to work on with you over periods of time, because so much goes on over the surface, so much. And so I bless you and thank you for your kind and wonderful attention. Those of you watching on live stream, please feel free to comment. Let us know how you respond to this. Let us know what you want to hear, because I want to serve you in any way I can by sharing the wisdom of an inclusive spiritual community with you and the responses we make to life.